Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome into a little something we like to call Hoop Streams. I'm Trevor Scales, alongside the gentlemen that have gotten you up to and through this NBA trade deadline. That is one, Adrian Wojnarowski and Zach Lowe. Appreciate you joining us, fellas. And it was quiet for a period of time, and all of a sudden it exploded to a whole bunch of tweets and information coming out at one standing. And I want to start in the East, right? And I think that's where a lot of the action happened. And we can start with the big by the name of Nikola Mirotic, headed out to the Bucks. From a transactional standpoint, what did you see from this one?
Well, I thought for Milwaukee, I mean, it was, listen, the best team in the East got better. And, you know, you think back to last year, the impact Mirotic made on that Pelicans team. You know, he played really well for them, helped them sweep Portland in the first-round series. And, you know, New Orleans had hoped they would get a first-round pick for him. And so for Milwaukee to get that deal done with really not giving up very much and improving and with a player that a lot of contenders were pursuing, I thought it was a really strong pickup for the Bucks.
And what do you see from it from a layout standpoint? What does this do for Giannis Antetokounmpo and opening up the floor for him?
Very quietly, because everyone's been paying attention to Anthony Davis and the Sixers and all the trades, the Bucks have been, other than the Warriors, the best team in the league all year, but particularly the last 3 weeks. They look like a powerhouse. I mean, an absolute powerhouse. They are killing teams, and they just fit so beautifully. Everybody knows their role, and Mirotic just fits right in. He's another shooter. He can play. You can play across a lot of positions. He gives them a lot of lineup flexibility. He's another ingredient where you can put Giannis at center and Mirotic at the 4, and even have Mirotic guard centers a little bit. It's just another piece for a team that is, I think, stylistically already the most flexible team in the NBA. They can play any style you want to play, they can play it.
Once again, this is Hoop Streams. I'm Trevor Scales, joined by the two gentlemen that have gotten you through the NBA trade deadline. That is Adrian Wojnarowski and Zach Lowe. Make sure you holler at us. I am y'all's mouthpiece here on Twitter. I am Trevor Scales, at Trevor Scales. You can hashtag us at hashtag Hoop Streams. Anything you want to ask these two gentlemen, holla at us via Twitter. We'll make sure we get it out there for you.
Anything. Almost
Just
anything.
about, that's a great correction.
No personal.
That's exactly right. Keep it within the NBA trades space, please, if you will. Now, another team in the East that made a move was Toronto, getting Marc Gasol. Another big on the move there. What does this transaction do for that team that now has 5 open roster spots at this point?
Well, you look at the open roster spots, and the Raptors are going to certainly be really involved in the buyout market, and you'll start to see those players get buyouts and waived here in the next few days. Agree to be able to, and they've got until March 1st. They have to be waived by March 1st to be able to be on a playoff roster. But listen, this is for Toronto. Bringing in Marc Gasol, who I think Toronto certainly his passing appeal to them, his IQ, his court savvy. This is a guy who's played in a lot of playoff games, a lot of big games, who's been, in a lot of just, drag out tough series in the Western Conference, and that certainly prepares you for anything. There's going to be this is going to be a real tough fight in the Eastern Conference for Toronto, and and he can opt out of his contract this summer, and so he can become a restricted or unrestricted free agent, or he can opt into that $25 million he has coming up. But for Toronto, they're trying to do everything they can with Kawhi Leonard on their roster to get to the NBA Finals, and obviously try to win it. But this is another step in Masai Ujiri's bid to go all in with this team, and having this all-NBA player on their roster and Kawhi Leonard. They don't know if they have him beyond this season.
So does this propel them into a chance at taking that top spot in the East from the Bucks at this point?
I don't think we can say any of these 4 teams are clearly favored. These are 4 really good teams.
Right.
I think Toronto felt real pressure after the Bucks got Mirotic, and particularly after the Sixers got Tobias Harris. I think they felt like we got to keep up. Boston couldn't keep up because they're saving all their stuff for
July 1, and
that we'll talk about. I honestly think this Toronto Gasol thing is maybe the most interesting move of today.
Really?
Because Toronto has gotten really far playing fast and small with Ibaka at center and a bunch of wings on the floor. And I'm really curious to see how they fit Gasol. If he starts, does Serge Ibaka go back to power forward? I feel like the toothpaste is out of the tube on that. You can't do that. Does he then become a reserve? Is he okay with that? Do they flip-flop them based on matchup, as they've done with Valanciunas and Ibaka, is because Gasol is not Jonas Valanciunas. Gasol is a decorated international star. Is he going to be cool with that? Is Ibaka going to be cool if he's a full-time backup? Pascal Siakam's a breakout star playing power forward. Now, he can guard any position. He can handle the ball, but the shooting quotient for them is best when he's at the 4. I just think this is like they have introduced an element, and Mark's a great player. And like you said, when the game slows down in the playoffs, Toronto's offense can sometimes get a little frenetic, a little sort of aimless. You give it Marc Gasol the ball at the elbow, good things are going to happen. Yeah. But how he fits, I think, is really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I think with both, and Zach brings it up, I think the two deals, the Philadelphia deal and the Toronto deal, how that impacts the chemistry of those groups, it's a sprint now to the playoffs, and there's not a lot of time to incorporate.
Toronto had a lot of time with Lowry and Kawhi on the floor together because you've got load management, which is like the new term du jour in the NBA, and Kyle's back is bad. I mean, like, that second round of the playoffs in the East is just going to be a war.
Yeah.
I love the talk about these, but you mentioned Tobias Harris and how that pressured Toronto into making a move. And with everything that's going on with the Sixers, them bringing in Tobias Harris, letting go and giving up on the prospect that is Markelle Fultz, that's a team that is really interesting for me at this point. And at Danny Boy 4231 asks, how do you think the Sixers are going to do with the added depth that comes with a Tobias Harris add?
I'm a little nervous getting like anonymous Sixers Twitter accounts asking us questions on the show. Their depth is actually their problem. Now, they'll repair some of it in the buyout market too, and they picked up a couple stray pieces toward the end here, so that helps. But Tobias Harris, I mean, they are loaded in their starting 5. They have 4 really good players. They'll probably keep 2. Well, they have 5 really good players if you include JJ, and they'll probably keep 2 of them on the floor at all times, so their lineups are really balanced. How they fit when they're all together, who takes a sort of a back seat.
Right.
And no one there has been super happy about taking even like kind of the good back seat. It's going to be interesting, but they're huge. They can play a lot of different styles. These teams are all really good. They're all really good.
And I think, Woj, for me, when you look at that roster construction too, you mentioned it's 5 really good players. You're going to have to pay a couple of them at the end of the season, and if you don't make the run in the next 1 to 2 years. What is the front office thinking in that regard when it comes to having to make sure they manage pay structure going forward if it doesn't work out this season?
When they made the trade, with the Clippers, they knew what all this would cost to re-sign Butler, re-sign Harris, and then give Ben Simmons his extension. And these are all players who potentially, I think there's no question Ben Simmons will get a max. That's like a first day max deal on when he's
12:01 a.m.
Yeah, and I think Tobias Harris has played himself. You know, I think the Clippers thought that Tobias Harris was going to get a max offer from somebody. There were enough teams with space, and
the Sixers think that too.
Right, and so whether it's in Philly or somewhere else, and listen, the Tobias Harris trade too, it buys Philly some insurance based on whatever might happen with Jimmy Butler, and I think they're committed. I think Philly's committed to seeing this through long term with all 4 of them. But things happen, and like who knows how they exit the playoffs? Who knows what the chemistry of the group is? And but Philly's in a position to, listen. Ownership went a very long time there with no payroll at all and banking a lot of money when they were going through the tanking for multiple years. Yep. And so now, listen,
great point.
They want, you've seen this in Oklahoma City. They're paying this massive luxury tax bill, and there were a lot of years the Thunder were not in the tax, and so now you're paying for that success, and you're paying for the talent that you brought in, and so they know what it's going to cost, and this ownership group, they believe they have a championship window here, and bringing Harris into them was, adding another piece that they thought could get them over the top in the East.
And all their extra stuff is gone.
Right.
They traded 1 pick for Fultz, or to move up to get Fultz. They traded 2 for Tobias. They traded 2 rotation players for Jimmy Butler. Like they're out of extra stuff. No, they're not out. They have some seconds and all that stuff, but their best extra stuff is gone. They could go back into the cap space game, especially with the Fultz gone, but that means that one or both of Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris are also gone, which is not ideal. So they have gone all in a lot of different ways. They've gone all in.
And I want to kind of talk about that piece of Markelle Fultz moving on from that individual as a franchise. You mentioned before we even got started here that was one of the more interesting things about this entire day. What drew you to that conclusion when it comes to the Markelle Fultz saga?
Well, I mean, it's a saga. That's why. And it's going to be a continued saga. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on with him. Nobody really knows the nature of his injury. His recovery timeline has long passed, and we don't know what he's doing or when he's coming back. And now he gets to go to a new team that needs a point guard badly, and it's a good place for him to be able to. I mean, is he going to play this year? I don't really have any idea. The whole thing is just fascinating.
Yeah, I was told it was iffy about whether he'd play this year. But I know the Magic traded for him as a long-term project. He's a reclamation project. And they didn't really give up much. They didn't have to put Terrence Ross into that deal. The Magic would like to still try to make the playoffs this year, and Terrence Ross has had a good year for them. So they did it with a couple draft picks and Jonathan Simmons, who, it certainly isn't nearly the loss that Ross would have been. And listen, they've got a tremendous coach there in Steve Clifford and a really good staff, and they've always been a really good teaching staff. And I think Steve Clifford's disposition, he's a very patient coach. He's very tough. He can be tough on guys, but he's always been able to build relationships. You know, it's funny. Brett Brown had a great relationship with Markelle Fultz. Steve Clifford and Brett Brown, essentially, the only two, great trivia question, what two NBA coaches are from Maine?
Yeah, there it is.
Steve Clifford was an assistant at Boston University for Brett Brown's father, Bob Brown. He's known him forever, and I'm sure that Steve will talk with Brett and get some of his perspective. But I know that they're going to. This isn't their, hey, we traded and found our point guard of the future. They probably very much will go out in free agency this summer or in the draft. And if Fultz comes along and makes progress, then they've found something in him.
Now, when it comes to what the Sixers got back, you mentioned Jonathan Simmons, a couple picks as well. How did they view as far as what they spent to go up and get Markelle Fultz? Getting back what you did, are you satisfied?
No, you can't get back what they gave up. What they gave up, and Zach brought this point up, and he's exactly right. They wouldn't have had to go get Tobias Harris. If the way this is supposed to work out is you not only picked Markelle Fultz #1 overall, you traded up from 3, and that's kind of like the cardinal rule in the draft is you don't trade up for 1 or 2 spots, and usually the difference is marginal and the cost of another first-round pick. And looking back, they could have. Danny Ainge always wanted Jason Tatum and didn't want Fultz, and he was able to move down to take the guy
he already
didn't have to take it one. So, but financially, they would be in a situation where it would be Embiid, Simmons, and Fultz would be on his rookie contract, and if they would have brought Butler in their minds, they would have had their 4 stars there. Now you essentially, you have to pay so much more and what it costs them. So you traded a pick, you traded 2 picks really to get Fultz. Now you've traded 2 future picks to get Tobias Harris to bring in the guy. And so the cost builds. When you blow it that high in the draft, not only miss on the pick, but give away another future lottery pick, there's a price to be paid. But Philly's still in a position where it didn't devastate the franchise, but it's certainly going to cost ownership a lot more money.
Incredible ramifications for a brother that's only played 33 career games. You even called it the biggest trade of the day for those reasons, for everything that you just laid out. A name that I'd be remiss if we do not mention on Hoop Streams here with Adrian Wojnarowski and Zach Lowe, Trevor Scales joining you here on Twitter Live, is Anthony Davis, right? All of the smoke that led up into this 3 p.m. deadline that eventually died down in some sense, but there was no shortage of conversation about the methodology and how it all rolled out and everything that went into the discussions for a player like that, a once-in-a-lifetime player, obviously. When all the dust has settled around that Lakers organization, Zach, for you, how do the young guys have to respond after everything comes out like this?
You got to be pros. I mean, it's uncomfortable. I don't think that team has a lot of cohesion within its roster and within the general organization. I think this has been uncomfortable. I think it's been an uncomfortable year. It's LeBron and the young guys, and they're not on the same timeline, and they're not always. There's not a lot of cohesion, but they're 500. LeBron is the greatest player in the world. The young guys, you think these young guys are good enough to get Anthony Davis? you should be able to regroup and make the playoffs. Now, maybe so much damage has been done, I don't know, but I just think, there's a lot of season left. Just regroup, you find your identity as a team, keep striving. I don't think it should be that hard.
Yeah, and all that, and what Zach said, all of what Zach just said, in a very unstable situation with their coaching position, because players know when the coach isn't supported within the organization at the highest levels. They know. And they went through this in Miami, and when Miami was challenged with Eric Spoelstra, when LeBron challenged Eric Spoelstra, when that group, Pat Riley, turned all the players around and said, Eric's the coach, go back downstairs, and you're playing for him.
Right.
And LeBron was under a 4-year contract then, and it wasn't only LeBron then, too. They challenged Spo, and we know what came of it. He's a Hall of Fame coach off of his time with winning 2 titles there, getting to the finals 4 times. But that's not the case in LA, and Magic Johnson didn't hire Luke Walton, and I think the first chance they get to get out from Luke Walton, I think they probably will, and that's known. The players know that, they sense it, and that adds to all of this.
This was it's almost like too predictable. This idea that LeBron was going to go there and be patient for many, many years.
Right.
Like he went there for lifestyle reasons. I get it. He went there. He was going to be patient with the young guys. Like it took like 10 games for that not to be a thing anymore.
Now, it's funny because we do all this talk about the Lakers and the young core that's already there, but they've made some moves that we've known to be the standard when it comes to building a team around LeBron. It's LeBron and a bunch of cheap veterans. They brought in a couple guys that'll help in the outside presence in shooting, like Reggie Bullock. And I'm blanking on the other name, and forgive me for
Mike Muscala.
Thank you, Mike Muscala, that they also brought in for outside shooting as well. So is this sort of panning out to be the turn? Are they going to be able to sort of make this run that we're used to seeing with LeBron?
Bullock will help. Mike Muscala will help. Defensively, he won't. But I'm not sure that the Lakers are aware of this, but they had Brook Lopez on their team last year and spent his salary slot on Michael Beasley, who nobody was offering more than the minimum for reasons that no one has any idea. And they put forth these cockamamie theories about how they were building this team because LeBron wanted more playmakers around him. No, they needed shooting. They didn't have enough shooting, so they got shooting. And everyone's counting them out of the playoffs. I don't know why. They should be a playoff team to me. So
what kind of contingency plans are the Lakers looking at if AD is out the window come July 1 and Danny Ainge makes a move and gets him in there despite everything that his pops has said about not wanting to go there? What sort of contingency plan do the Lakers need to set up?
Well, listen, in some ways, the plan, the hope had always been in LA would be that they would use their cap space to sign a big free agent in July, then use those young players and picks to then trade for the third star, ideally Anthony Davis. So if somehow Anthony Davis lingers on the New Orleans roster and Boston, I don't know, what's the worst case scenario in Boston? Kyrie Irving leaves and Boston decides not to offer as much, doesn't offer Jason Tatum, and the Lakers get back in this, I guess it could come back to them in a way that works where they could end up with the 3 stars, but who's the second star coming in free agency? And while I'm not going to rule them out with a few of the big stars, I think things are really going to have to break right for them to get one of the elite ones. I don't think they're a front runner for any of them. I don't think they're a front runner for Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard. I certainly know they're not getting Kyrie Irving. They need a lot of things to break right, but they may have to roll over that space again this summer, sign someone to that big 1-year contract, and then get back into free agency in 2020 when they could sign, Anthony Davis if he's not traded somewhere else and wanting to stay. And at that point, LeBron is 35 years old? Yeah.
So when it comes to that Laker, actually, let's shift back to the Anthony Davis discussion because I am interested into seeing what the Pelicans will do with him going forward after the All-Star break. How do they manage his workload, as we've sort of seen done with other superstars? And then how do you protect your asset to then be traded or moved at some point? What are you doing from a coaching standpoint then?
Well, he wants to play. He made it known that he wants to play. I think that was one of 900 leverage plays that went into trying to get him to the Lakers. I don't know what the right answer is for the Pelicans. Honestly, to me, when a player comes and says, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, trade me, I think they're within their rights to say, you have made a declaration. You separated yourself from our team. you don't want to be here anymore. We are not obligated. We should not be obligated to grant your wish to then be on the court. I don't really think they have an obligation to do that. Maybe by the letter of the law they do. There's rumors that he might file a grievance. I mean, maybe by the letter of the law he has a case. But I guess we'll see what happens. I'm sure Alvin Gentry would like to win more games. He'd help him do that.
Yeah, this is not going to be a coaching decision. This is an ownership decision. Alvin Gentry will. And that would be the case with almost any team. This is going to be made at the management level or or at the ownership level. So, I know they're talking about that now in New Orleans. I think they've known since before the 3 p.m. deadline when it passed that they weren't trading Anthony Davis. I think they made a decision before the Lakers even made an offer to them. I think they knew what was available on the Lakers roster. They never pushed the Lakers to give them more. I think this was their plan all along, and was to take this into the offseason. So, they're going to have to fairly soon, declare themselves on how they want to go forward. But like Zach said, I think this asset for them is their one chance. If they're going to trade them, which I think we all have every expectation they will at some point. The future of their organization depends on the kind of deal they do for Anthony Davis, the kinds of players, picks, all the things that go into trading a player of this magnitude, and the risk of a player who's been injured and had his share of injuries in different parts of his body. There's risk. There's a lot of risk of having him on the court on a team that I think we all agree is not going to make the playoffs.
Now, honoring the agreement of wanting to play is one thing, but I want to also talk about the honoring his request of where he wants to be traded. What sort of damage can be done if you don't honor exactly what he wants or go to the top few that he was looking at as far as a trade candidate?
I don't think any. I mean, his representation can, threaten our relationship when we have other players, coming up for free agency. This may linger. There may be consequences, but I think everyone here is a professional, and I think the rule of the professionalism will rule the day, and that is, the franchise should do what's best for itself. I think Anthony Davis's representation understands that, and I don't think anyone would, even people with a stake in where he goes, would hold any grudges against the Pelicans for dealing him to wherever. I just don't think that will be a thing.
This is Hoop Streams. Appreciate you joining us here. I'm Trevor Scales, joined by Adrian Wojnarowski, Zach Lowe. These two gentlemen have gotten you to and through the NBA trade deadline. We're here as the dust is settling to sort of get your mind right, get you an understanding as to what all of the moves have meant and what they will mean going forward. That date of July 1st is marked on everybody's calendar that follows this league. We'll see what happens then again, but this sort of action should have tided you over until that mark. So I want to kind of talk about the weirdness that is Anthony Davis is one thing, but a gentleman by the name of Nick Stauskas might have had the weirdest week by any stretch of the imagination. 3 different trades. How does something like this happen? As simply put as I can, how does something like this happen, Woj?
There was a summer, and I'm trying to remember who it was.
Luke Ridnour.
Luke Ridnour got traded. I remember.
I think he got traded 6 times.
And I remember I think I was 5 for 5 on it. And I remember my goal was to get every one of them. And I think we did on Stauskas too. When you're a player on a minimum contract and you can just start bouncing, and he started bouncing, and it's.
I actually feel bad for him. It's funny.
He got up to such a good start in Portland.
It's funny to talk about. He comes to Sacramento. It's a disastrous atmosphere. It's a disastrous situation. He goes to Philly, can't quite find himself there. Nets can't quite find himself there. Finds a home on a winning team in Portland. Looks like he's a core part of their rotation, right. And then, for whatever reason, things go south, and then this happens, and it's fun to joke about, but it's been a rough go in the NBA for Nick.
Now, when it comes to the potential buyout market that he will potentially be he is a part of at this point, what sort of market are we looking at this point in the NBA as far as buyouts go?
Well, he's actually in the I got waived market
Fair
versus
enough.
the Robin
Buyout,
Lopez's and players of that thing. But yeah, I think there'll be some really good players in there. There are going to be some good players. We just reported Enes Kanter is headed that way. Robin Lopez will start to talk with the Bulls about that, and
they just will not free Robin Lopez. Just won't do it. Let's get Robin Lopez out on the market. He's good. Let's put him on a
free Robin.
Team.
Hashtag free Robin. Feel free to tweet that in as well.
Yeah, and it's a second wave of free agency. Houston has created. some flexibility that they can be active there. They've always done well in the buyout market. Philadelphia, think of the impact on that Philly team last year with Ilyasova and Bellinelli. I mean, that really propelled that group. That when you go back through the last several years, you look at a lot of the buyouts and you say, we always make a bigger deal about it. It's like this sort of hybrid free agency. It gets us through like March Madness. You're not paying attention to the
Ron Williams on the Cavs.
Right. All of a sudden, and it's like some of these guys we treat, it's like this guy couldn't get off the bench on this bad team, but all of a sudden he's going to come help this contender. They'll be like, but there will be guys who can help. And, Toronto's got, 11 roster spots after today? So Masai will be, he may be all over the world looking for players to fill.
And some of these guys, like Wayne Ellington can swing a quarter of a playoff game.
Right.
And if you swing a quarter of a playoff game at the right moment, like and the team ends up doing something special, like people remember you forever. He's that kind of shooter.
What kind of market is there for Melo, if any?
Well, he's been in that world and it hasn't.
There's
a hope. The Lakers have a spot. They're going to look and see what is available to them, who's available to them. I think there's a push and pull in the organization about, I think LeBron James wants Carmelo Anthony. I think the organization is going, let's make sure we get the best available player if we can get him. I will say this, I don't know how attractive this Lakers situation is to premier buyout guys. I don't think there were years where most guys wanted to go to LA. If they could get one of those Laker roster spots, they were there. I don't think this feels like, especially a veteran player who's been around the league, who looks at what he wants to be a part of. And for the buyout guys, they treat that, I've got to pick a team where I'm going to be showcased, where I'm going to get an opportunity to play, where it's very functional, we can go deep in the playoffs, because I'm playing for my next free agent deal. Do the Lakers fulfill any of those requirements for, among the better players? I don't think they do.
So the 2016 Cavs regret nothing because they won the title. But every team that reserves these roster spots for like the friends of LeBron who are on their last legs ends up regretting it because it's like we could have used that on a two-way. We could have used that on like the previous version of a two-way. We could have used that on a young player. Like, if they signed Carmelo Anthony, the Hollywood plot police would throw. It's too predictable. It's too predictable. It's too much. Stop.
We've been saying it for quite some time.
But I still think there's going to be, as the roster, as spots have opened up, I think there's a job out there for Carmelo. Even if it's not LA, I think there's somebody who's going to bring him in, even if it's not them. Kind of the dust clears now. Teams look around at what's out there, and I don't think he's played his last game this season, even if the Lakers.
I hope not.
As we wrap up Hoop Streams here, Trevor Scales, Adrian Wojnarowski, Zach Lowe here with you. Want to get quick take on who your winners and losers were from this NBA trade deadline?
Well, you got to start at the top of the East, where essentially everyone is a winner when you factor in their team this year. All those teams, other than and Boston is a winner by virtue of Anthony Davis not getting traded. They might be the biggest winner by virtue of Anthony Davis not getting traded.
Still being out there, yep.
Listen, the two biggest losers are the Lakers and Pelicans because their seasons, I think the Lakers season was upended by the last couple of weeks of the whole Anthony Davis thing. I think it tore at the fabric of their group. You saw it play out in public and New Orleans. I think, for them, they've got to start to figure out how they're going to go forward as an organization. And while I think maybe a lot of their fans or some people are happy they didn't trade him to the Lakers, it doesn't change the inevitable that Anthony Davis is going to leave there. They're going to have to move him. You're never getting value for Anthony Davis. Whatever trade they make, they're never going to say, boy, hey, that worked out great for us. I don't think it will. But
it never feels good to have a superstar or a generational talent like that lead.
They can get 10 first-round picks, 12 first-round picks. They're not getting another Anthony Davis.
It's not going to feel like enough. It never will. And I think when it comes to the what-ifs and all the things that we talk about and all the speculation that is around that stuff, it makes all of us as a staff think about the trades that didn't quite happen but are certainly worth mentioning and reminiscing about. Last thing before we go, we'll start. In 2000, Allen Iverson was nearly traded to the Pistons. Well, do you remember anything from that storyline there?
I don't even think I was covering the NBA in
I sure
2000.
So
I'm the wrong guy on that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
but it blew up because Matt Geiger had a provision in his contract he wouldn't waive, and And I think it worked out pretty well for the Pistons, who went on to win a championship and got to the Game 7 of another finals. And that's the case.
And then they got Allen Iverson later.
Yeah, and that's they did get Allen Iverson a little too late.
A little bit too late. And then we had 07, Kobe headed to the nearly going to the Pistons, and then Chris Paul, the basketball reasons veto from the office of the league, wrapping up the prospective trades that never really panned out. I appreciate you joining us, fellas. This has been Hoop Streams. You can always make sure you holler at us here. I will be Saturday in Houston for another edition. I'll be a lot less buttoned up, but we'll keep a show running, and hopefully we'll get it going off the ground. In any case, appreciate you again, gentlemen. That is Adrian Wojnarowski. That is Zach Lowe. We hope you got caught up on the trade deadline, and make sure you stay tuned to ESPN for all your other needs regarding NBA.